I Claudius is one of the best, if not the best, television show I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not saying it just in terms of me being a huge fan of Roman history. You do not need to be interested in history in order to be able to appreciate this series, because I Claudius is about so much more, in my opinion. Yeah, the main idea is the historical recreation, but this series is a gem you need to watch if you're like extremely interested in acting, let's say. I would go to my grave claiming this. I cannot think of any other instance of acting in either TV or cinema that surpasses the acting in I Claudius. It's an absolute masterclass in acting skills and in acting of all kinds, dramatic roles, comedic roles, good roles, evil roles, all of it. It has such a rich pattern of characters and scenes that I think, even though I do not have acting education, I think it's just a visual acting textbook. From mastering the skill of making your pretend emotions seem sincere, to the control of your voice and to the most subtle changes and tricks you do with your facial muscles, I Claudius really is sheer perfection. And this is just in terms of acting. Other than acting, I think it's also a masterpiece in terms of writing. I am a book reader and I've read the novels by Robert Graves. I think they're one of the greatest novels ever written. And usually for me, it's almost always the case that the book is better than the show slash film. But I Claudius is one of the few instances where this assumption of mine is somewhat disturbed. With I Claudius, I cannot decide which one I like better, the book or the series. The book, of course, is much more detailed and complex and able to immerse you in the world of the Julio Claudians, and the TV series is much simpler, but the simplification of the series is overshadowed by its brilliance in terms of acting, shooting, and script. To this day, I cannot pick one, the book or the show, and this is a sign for me that I've really come across an immortal masterpiece. I feel the same way with, say, Lord of the Rings and The Song of Ice and Fire. You know, at least in terms of the first six seasons of Game of Thrones. But anyway, you know what I mean. You know that something is a masterpiece if it leaves you wondering and not being able to pin it down. If you can give something an evaluation right away without even thinking about it, I think it's clear that at the end of the day, it's not entirely memorable. But if you're struggling to decide whether a story is better in its written or screen form, then I think you've hit gold. And I'm one of those people who always have to pick, and not being able to pick pains me. But at the end of the day, it's the sweet kind of pain. I'll just go to my grave um, salivating between the I Claudius books and TV show. And so, because of this, I have decided that I'll dedicate to I Claudius, the show, the same time and effort that I've been giving to HBO's Rome, where I review the entire freaking thing, literally scene by scene, and giving my analysis of it. I even think I Claudius is better than HBO's Rome, so one might wonder why I didn't start with I Claudius first. But hey, life is random and I'm not perfect. Better late than never. After more or less a decade of me thinking about doing this, here I finally am getting my ass moving. I will review I Claudius in full, each episode, each scene, in separate videos, until I finish the whole thing. I don't know how long it's gonna take me, given my production speed, but the important thing is that I've finally started. And if anyone watches this and loves I Claudius as I do, I hope you have fun with me and share in the joy that this masterpiece gives me every single day of my life. And so let us finally start with episode 1 of I Claudius, which is called A Touch of Murder, which I guess is a reference to the murder of Marcellus by Livia, as this is the pivotal element of this first episode. We start, of course, with the intro, which is a display of a mosaic of Claudius, and more precisely, Claudius as portrayed by Derek Jacobi. It has to be noted that the mosaic really resembles him. They did not botch this element, even though it was just the intro. And two other main elements have to be noted about this intro. First, the snake that gets in our face. This, of course, is a reference to poison, which is the weapon of choice of our main antagonist, Livia Drusilla. Poisoning people is probably the most prominent feature of this show. I don't think it was that prominent in the novels because, as far as I remember, there was a lot, of course, a lot of poisoning there as well. But in the books, just the sheer immensity of the details of the story obscured poisoning itself as a prominent method of murder. In the novels, there's people being killed all around and in many more various methods, so it didn't make me remember the poisoning specifically. Though I do actually remember there's this hilarious bit in the books where after Livia dies, they find her box of poisons and they dump it in a lake or something, and all the fish starts bobbing up dead on the surface, which was insane. Um, but in the show, poisoning really is a pivotal element, and they show it right at the start with this disgusting snake. Disclaimer: I have nothing against reptiles and people who like them, but I have a very specific fear of reptiles, snakes and lizards, frogs and whatnot. I get freaked out by them just touching me. So for me specifically, this intro just hits hard and I get shivers from the very beginning. And the other, maybe even more prominent feature of this intro is actually the music. This is the first and last ever part of the series where we ever get any kind of soundtrack. The rest of it is just sheer acting with no background music whatsoever. And let me explain something about myself. As a film lover, I love my soundtracks in films and shows. I live for epic, dramatic music from films, and I generally watch a film or show for, to a large extent, for the music. It's extremely important for me. It makes up about 70% of the story in my head. There's cases of horribly stupid movies that I completely fall in love with just because of the music. And most of the time when I listen to music, it's not regular music, but instead it's soundtracks from films and TV. This is how utterly important film music is for me. I'll be going to a fucking Hans Zimmer concert in a couple of days, and I'm already salivating. And I otherwise never ever go to any concerts. I usually even hate such events with, massive prongs of screaming idiots. Anyway, my point is, film music is of extreme importance to me. And in I Claudius, they have none. There's no soundtrack.
But there's no music at all.
And even so, this show still makes me shiver and laugh and want to cry just by the sheer acting power. Something more I'd add even. Before watching I Claudius, I had never realized how dramatic silence can be. Sometimes, in order to achieve the greatest effect of acting, what you need is exactly dead silence in the background. And I'll be able to perfectly illustrate this with a particular scene in the fourth episode of the series, which is the part where Augustus dies. I just have no words to describe it other than sheer brilliance. And with that, we're done with just the intro. We then finally start with the show itself and the first scene. And with the first scene, we find ourselves in the company of Claudius, who is already old, about to die, and writing his secret history, which he intends to leave for posterity. And that is the history of his family, the Julio Claudians. And it's a double name because it's basically two family branches combined into one. The Julian part, of course, coming from Julius Caesar, who at this point has been dead for, I think, about a century or so. And the other part, the Claudian family, which is the family of Claudianus, the father of Livia Drusilla, our current antagonist in the series. And these two families, the Julians and the Claudians, came together when Octavian, or as he's later known, Augustus, married Livia Drusilla, Claudianus's daughter. And so the double family of the Julio Claudians is formed, which family goes on to rule the entire Roman Empire basically from the rise of Augustus in the 30s before Christ until the death of Nero toward the end of the 60s after Christ. So, as one can imagine, this must have been quite the family and quite the life that those family members led, having been put on a pedestal before the entire world. What else could ensue between them except for complete carnage? There was fighting for power and survival all over the place, no scruples whatsoever. And as horrible as it was for them, unfortunately, there's a plus side to it for us because this kind of circus makes for great drama and entertainment. And one might say that the ancient Romans, although they died many centuries ago, they still keep giving us bread and circuses. And they'll probably never stop. Anyway, I went on a bit of a tangent. Let me get back to the scene. So we see old Claudius, who is our main character of the story, writing his memoirs in his room. I have to say, not so much as a negative point, but as something that I needed to overcome with this series. So I Claudius, the TV show, is fucking old. It was made in 1976, and it absolutely looks like it was made then. Growing up as a child, my entire family used to watch that stupid soap opera, The Bold and the Beautiful. And so when you see I Claudius for the first time, it looks like that, only in ancient Rome. And if you've got a bias against 70s and 80s soap opera TV looks, you will have to overcome it in order to enjoy I Claudius. God help me, I know I did. It took me some time to get used to this style of TV without perceiving it as cheesy. Trust me, it's worth it. Make the effort, get used to it, overcome the bias. After that, you'll be in heaven. And the second thing I had to overcome was the aging makeup. It looks totally fake, especially on old Claudius, but but my brain learned to love this as well, and here is why. Yeah, the makeup looks fake, but after watching a few episodes, it kind of becomes natural in your mind. You just start perceiving it as the style of filmmaking at the time. And also, the fake look of the makeup, in a weird way, starts acting as, how should I say it, a character accelerator. Meaning that, at least for me, the fakeness of the makeup implied a fakeness of character. For example, with Livia later on, her wrinkled makeup looks completely fake, but instead of having a bad impact on the show, it actually assists you in you feeling that Livia herself is fake, meaning two-faced as a person and a lying schemer. She might be smiling and talking nicely to someone, being a sweetheart, but you fucking know that she's lying and that she has some disgusting ulterior motive. And the fake makeup makes her seem as if she's a fucking snake and her old skin is peeling off. And let me stress, maybe that's just my brain trying to hold on to any kind of argument in support of the crappy makeup just because I love the show so much. But hey, ultimately, it floats my boat, and I know it will float yours as well if you learn to like it, or at least be able to ignore it. One might make the same argument about the entire show having a cheap look because it's filmed in a closed studio and it always looks like they're filming a play on a stage, always in some room, always with some curtains in the background and stuff like that. But I think, and let me just stress that this is not my original opinion. I read this somewhere in a review by a critic whose name I do not remember, but he said something which I thought was brilliant. The supposedly cheap look of a stage play in a closed studio actually contributes positively to the experience because the closed and dark spaces give you a feeling of claustrophobia and always being trapped in a maze with these horrible people, always hiding somewhere behind a curtain, always in some dark, narrow hallway full of mirrors, and you looking all over the mirrors to try and see if someone is trying to stab you from behind. And this point by the critic might have been a similar effort on the part of his brain, like minded with the makeup to try and justify the shitty stages and props just because he likes the show so much. But again, I think it's the mark of a masterpiece anyway, that it's so good that it can make you find a way to appreciate even its imperfections. And oh my god, my mouth broke, and I'm still in the very first scene of the show. Let me cut it off here, and we'll continue in the next part. At least it looks like I'll be able to get a lot of content out of it because my mouth runs like crazy when I talk about things that I love. So I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching. To whoever is watching this, you're awesome and I love you.